Hi everyone, and welcome to the organ loft here in Llandaff Cathedral. It's really great to be playing to you today in what is the first of what I hope will become a small series of organ recitals and other recitals over the coming weeks from the cathedral here. I'm going to play a few pieces for you today, which I hope will show off the colours and the things we can do with the organ here at the cathedral. We're very fortunate indeed to have such a fantastic instrument here in Llandaff, built between 2010 and 2013 by Nicholson's. It's a very comprehensive instrument indeed, and hopefully over the next few weeks I'll be able to show off some of the capabilities of the organ here in the cathedral. So today, the first piece I'm going to start with is the Fanfare by John Cook. And this is a piece which is based around the first three verses of Psalm 81, which is a very joyous psalm indeed. You'll hear right from the outset the tuba stop, which is situated in the front of the case, in the south aisle, right where everyone can hear it really clearly. The piece starts off with this fanfare motif, and then in the middle a quieter sort of dance-like section before we hear the fanfare again near the end. This is a piece that I first remember hearing when I was about 14 or 15 years old, and I remember going to a recital where Julian Weir played this piece, and it really captured my imagination. So it's a really good recital opener. I hope you enjoy this first piece. The second piece in today's recital is the middle of a set of 3 preludes on Welsh hymn tunes by Vaughan Williams. The Prelude on Rhosymedre, which is a really beautiful Welsh hymn tune composed in the middle of the 19th century. Vaughan Williams spent a lot of time when compiling the English hymnal going around the British Isles and collecting melodies to use for the hymns in the new book. And we really have to thank for helping us to know more hymn tunes and more tunes from all over the country. This one, in this particular arrangement by him, starts off with the accompaniment first, and we hear a really peaceful accompaniment right at the beginning of the piece, before the tune comes in the left hand on the lower manual down here, first of all. In the middle of the piece, it develops. We hear it slightly louder in the top of the texture this time, and with some rather characteristic Vaughan Williams harmony, lots of moving notes throughout the harmony, before again it dies away to a peaceful conclusion near the end. So this is the Vaughan Williams Prelude on Rhosymedre. Next we move on to the Fanfare and Gothic March by Weitz, who was a Belgian organist composer and who moved to London at the outbreak of the First World War. His works deserve to be better known, and this one starts off in particularly grand fashion with a very grand fanfare at the opening of the piece, which you'll hear utilising a lot of the reed stops we have on the organ here in Llandaff. We're very fortunate to have both a tuba, which you heard in the first piece by John Cook, and also an orchestral trumpet, which is a slightly more nasal sounding trumpet, but also which is in the solo box, so we can control the volume of that a bit more satisfactorily than we can the tuba. And it's that which you'll hear along with the great reeds at the very start of this piece. After the opening fanfare, we hear then a really grand march begin, before a middle section which is a bit more like a scherzo on some flute stops. And he calls for some quite interesting registrations and lots of changes of manuals as well, which you'll be able to see happening in the middle part of the piece. It then builds up again, and we hear a restatement of the march theme before the piece comes to a very grand and very loud conclusion. So this is the Fanfare and Gothic March by Weitz. The miniature suite by John Ireland is a really good piece for showing off lots of colours on any instrument. The first movement, the Intrada, is a very stately sort of walking movement, which just sort of gently ebbs and flows and builds to a few climaxes as we go through. The middle movement is a little bit like spending a Sunday in the park, really, and features a bit of an argument taking place between the great harmonic flute and the solo, although played down here on the choir so that I don't have to wear my arms out, the solo corno di bassetto or clarinet stop. And you'll hear those two at the very outset of the middle movement having a little bit of an argument. It also features some particularly adventurous harmony, very chromatic harmony, as we go through, whilst these two protagonists have their argument. But ultimately, it's the flute that wins out at the end. The last movement, the Menuetto, is a little scherzetto, really, for the flute stops. And you'll hear, first of all, the solo flutes, harmonic flutes on the solo, and then also the great flutes and some stops on the swell as well. So there's lots of manual changes again in these movements. You'll also see at various times that Ireland calls for three manuals to be played at once, which is a particularly interesting effect. You'll see me thumbing down some things sometimes from swell to great, so that we get three distinctive colours all at once. So there's lots to watch out for in these three movements, and also lots for both the performer and the page turner to worry about too, as you'll see as we go along. So here's the miniature suite by John Ireland. The final piece in today's recital is the Passacaglia on a theme by Dunstable by John Weaver. This piece takes as its inspiration a 14th century tune written by Dunstable to celebrate the English defeat of the French at the Battle of Agincourt in 1415. You'll hear at the very outset of the piece the tune, which hopefully you'll recognise, in the left hand first of all on a trumpet stop, before the piece breaks off then into a series of variations as we go through, showing off various different colours of the organ, different textures and different styles of writing as well. This piece was written to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the state trumpet stops in the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City. And at the very middle of the piece, you'll hear a variation which was written for that very stop, which at one time I think was the loudest organ stop in the world. It's a very grand stop at the west end of the cathedral there in New York City. At the end of the piece, it breaks off into a fantastic toccata with ever-changing time signatures and rhythm and beat. And it's quite a unique feel to the end of this piece. Even then you'll hear over the top of this toccata the tune stated in held notes right over the top before the piece comes to a very, very loud and very bright conclusion. Thanks for tuning in for this recital today. If you've enjoyed hearing the organ here in Llandaff and you'd like to be able to know what's coming up a little bit more easily in the future, there are various ways in which you can do that. Please do think about subscribing to our YouTube channel, first of all. The more subscribers we have, the easier it will be for us to publish things like this. Please also think about visiting our website, www.llandaffcathedral.org.uk, where you can view all of our online content, sign up to our e-newsletter and keep up to date with everything that's going on. If you have enjoyed today's recital, then please do think about giving to the cathedral to show your appreciation. There are easy ways that you can do that, again by visiting the cathedral website, or even more straightforwardly by text giving, and you can see the numbers on the bottom of the screen while I'm talking to you here. But please do think about tuning in again. There'll be more content coming up in the coming weeks over the summer months, and we really hope that you've enjoyed today's recital and look forward to playing to you again in the future.